She is turning her personal pain into power. Eashtha Dediwela, who's currently reading for her master's at Harvard, just released her book, Like No Other, because no two people are alike. This is an epistolary novel detailing her journey with depression and anxiety and prioritizing her mental health in a country that barely acknowledges its existence. Eashtha is with me in the studio today to lay bare some bare facts on mental health. So, welcome, Eashtha. Mental illness is still a stigma in Sri Lanka, but you've gone ahead and laid it all bare in this book. Why did you do this?
Mental illness is something that a lot of people suffer silently, right? They're either afraid of being judged for it or being looked at differently. And with the recent events that has been happening, I feel like it's something very important that needs to be brought to light, especially to show people that they're not suffering alone and that there are people who have been through similar situations and have come out of it successfully.
How and when did you first have the realization that you had mental health issues and that you needed help?
I was only 12 at the time when I was diagnosed. So a 12-year-old doesn't really have a very good idea of that they have a mental health disorder or that they are struggling. I found the transition between junior school to senior school difficult, and I refused to go to school. So that's the point in which my parents decided to seek help. They first took me to a pediatrician who referred us to a psychiatrist. That's how that worked.
So, was that help that you needed forthcoming? What were the barriers? What was that journey like?
One thing, finding the right psychiatrist. So the first doctor I went to did not work out. She was very coercive with me. She scared me to death. She was like, if you don't go to school, I'll have to call the rehabilitation centers and put you in. So the way that she approached me terrified me even more. The second psychiatrist my parents took me to, I actually refused to go inside. So my parents went in, and he had suggested, not having one look at me or not speaking a word with me, had suggested that my parents come for his counseling, parenting sessions, to guide them on how to parent me better. So at that point, I had given up on all psychiatrists, and I said I don't want to see anyone. But after a lot of persuasion done by my parents, I decided to visit the last one, who actually worked out. Another barrier was that this didn't come from my family background, but I had the image that crazy people who went to psychiatrists, which wasn't the case, I found later on. But that was another barrier I had to sort of make my mind up to and go.
What was your biggest challenge growing up in Colombo, then moving overseas when you were dealing with these mental health challenges?
A huge challenge was the way that mental health is looked at in this country. I was looked at like some exotic animal that was brought in from a zoo when I when I was going through this. And I felt like, yes, while the children had no idea because they were small too, they were growing up, they had their own challenges. I think as adults, maybe people could have been a little more empathetic and sort of looked at things differently and maybe guided their children in a different angle. So that was one of the challenges I faced.
What do you think we need to tell school authorities specifically? You were being bullied. How to handle situations like that?
So my school was actually very supportive of me. They gave us all the support they needed. My parents would talk to the teachers constantly. They were all open to helping me at any point. But I think now there's only a very few handful of psychiatrists in the country, child and adolescent psychiatrists for the whole country, and that is not enough to treat the children and teens who are suffering and who are going through these situations. So maybe and a lot of the psychiatrists that are there, they migrate overseas to seek a better life and standards of living, higher pay, all of that. So I think something that school authorities can work on, helping retain these professional psychiatrists and psychologists. I think that's a huge area that they need to work on.
What triggered your mental health issues?
I'm not someone who's good with change. And the transition between junior to senior school was huge for me. I imagined it larger than it actually was. And I had terrified myself. So that is what plummeted me to a depression. But I had been showing signs like rising anger issues, wearing the same clothes every day from a couple of years back. But again, my parents, they didn't know anyone who was depressed, let alone a child who was depressed.
What have you learned about yourself and about society in these years?
One of the most important things I've learned is that people judge, like I don't know, at least in the society I moved, everything is gossip, right? Everyone strives on somebody else's faults or struggles. So to sort of take that with a grain of salt and not sort of care about what other people think, I think is very important, and it's something that young children, especially with the pressures of social media and everything, struggle with.
What is your take on the mental health landscape and the treatment landscape here in Sri Lanka?
Young people tend to divert to young doctors, young psychiatrists, and I think and psychologists. And I think we need more doctors and psychologists who think outside of the box and who approach children in very unique ways that suit them. This is not a one-size-fits-all situation.
So, back from when you were in school, do you think Sri Lankans have become more attuned and more open to finding out and being more aware about mental health issues?
Yes, I feel like they have, but at the same time, mental health is looked at in a very stigmatized way in this country. We need to raise more awareness by educating people. Support system should also be highlighted, right? Because a depressed child needs that.
Are there any signs that someone may be depressed or severely anxious that we could miss?
Wearing the same clothes every day, refusing to go to school or work or whatever, staring into space, falling behind in academics. Usually when a child falls behind in academics, the parents label them as lazy or not bothered or whatever. But there might actually be a bigger reason behind that. Some of the other symptoms can be a decline in personal hygiene and self-care, lack of interest in things once enjoyable like hobbies or whatever. Some might bite their nails, they would fidget a lot, they have feelings of nausea. Sometimes that would go to the extent of blacking out and fainting. Raised heartbeat, elevated breathing. So those are some of the signs.
Why is mental health awareness more important than ever now, and who needs to be aware?
The pressures on a child are also increasing. Social media isn't making anything any easier for anyone, right? And also the world is becoming more competitive out there, so it's more pressure on excelling in your academics and everything. So it's a lot for a teenager especially to deal with, since they too are navigating their self-identity.
What do you think are the three main takeaways from your book?
The first thing is the need for a support system, right? A depressed person is not able to seek the support they need because they just can't, they're not motivated, it's not in them. So it's up to the support system to drag this person out and hold them up until they are able to walk on their own. And they need to be behind them in case they fall to pick up the pieces as well. So the need for an important support system is the first thing. Second thing is that you are not alone in your struggles, right? There are people who have been through similar situations and have come out of it successfully. So never feel like you're alone. Third, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. If you try hard and if you have the right support, nothing is impossible.
So here's hoping more people will find that light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Eashtha. Remember, Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe, follow and like us for more.